So, I just turned 30.
This is fine.
I think it's kind of that age where you do really start to become aware about your own mortality. And through all of my learnings about health and the human body, what I've noticed is that it really is around your 30s that things start to slow down. Some gradual shifts in your health really do begin. Things like muscle, bone density, overall metabolism, they don't just decline overnight when you turn 30, but this is the age where the trends that lead to them slowing down start. And so in today's video, I want to go through the main areas with health and also some of the health markers that I'm now paying just that little bit more attention to, not because anything is wrong, but because I know that this is the best time to catch anything before they turn into problems in my 50s or 60s if I'm lucky enough to get there. And you know what? They may still turn into problems later on, but at least I know I tried. That's all you can really do. The point is to not become obsessed with getting things tested or constantly looking at your health data. It is just simply about staying informed, making small changes now so that hopefully you don't need to wake up one day and suddenly turn your whole life around down the track. So, let's go. I'm going to start with probably one of the most important ones, and that is of course muscle mass. I don't actually think this one is that overlooked anymore. People are definitely starting to see the importance of muscle mass. We can see this with the increase in gym culture and running and all that. But we do start to gradually lose muscle from around the age of 30, and the medical term for this is sarcopenia. It means age-related muscle loss. And look, at 30, this does happen very slowly, but it adds up. And if you ignore your muscle mass, you can run into some real problems when you're much older. It will impact on your quality of life. And I do really harp on about this a lot on this channel. Lack of muscle mass, it leads to frailty, and that quite literally kills. You may not care too much at 30 because 70 looks so far away, but doing just a little bit of strength training now, maybe even 2 to 3 days a week, that's ideal, can make a huge difference. And it could be the difference between you being able to play and run around with your grandkids versus not being able to. And that's a pretty big thing. I'm not saying that I'm going to run out and get a DEXA scan or anything just to make sure I have optimal muscle mass. That's not necessary at this age unless you're like an elite athlete. But I have been lifting weights since I was 19. I still lift weights, and my goal is just to simply not stop doing that. So this one, I'm actually not worrying a whole lot about. It's not one I'm thinking too much about monitoring, but if you are someone who hasn't really done much resistance exercises, consider starting now. It doesn't matter if you haven't done it before, it's never too late. Next up is bone health. Now, this is a bit of a graph to show how bone density works. So this graph is just trying to show your bone density as you get older. And as you can see here, it will peak in your early 30s to late 20s. And this is called the peak bone mass, this point where it is highest. And essentially the amount of calcium or strength or impact-based movement that you did from your childhood until this point determines where that peak is. And the higher it is, the better, because at this point it will start to decline. And if your peak is nice and high, then it will take longer to get to the point where it's too low and becomes osteoporosis. Now, it is important to note that this does go down a bit faster in women. And look, I'm not panicking just yet about getting osteoporosis, but I am really starting to make sure that I'm getting enough calcium and vitamin D, and I do take supplements for those too now. I'm continuing to do strength training as well, because putting a little bit of stress on your bones, it makes them adapt so that they become stronger. But I just want to point out that you can't increase your bone density once that peak has been reached, but you can slow down the rate at which it declines by making those small lifestyle changes. So at 30, it's not something that you need to track, but it is worth being mindful about your calcium, your vitamin D, and how much exercise that you are doing, as well as the type of exercise. So moving on from muscle and bone to some blood markers. Now, blood sugar is just something that you should start keeping an eye on. Issues with blood sugar, they don't usually show up until later, but insulin resistance can start much earlier, and it does slowly develop in the background. Basically, before you get diagnosed with diabetes and see your blood sugar rising, insulin will be working overtime to be to make sure that your blood sugar is kept okay. Now, this is called insulin resistance. It's when your body is not responding to insulin as well as it used to. And so what it does is it starts making more and more insulin to get the job done. And it kind of succeeds at doing this at first, but when this all fails, that's when your blood sugar starts to go up, and that could lead to a diabetes diagnosis. So I would just simply tell everyone at 30 or around there to just check where your blood sugar is at, because while it is still young to be getting those issues, things like family history or other health conditions do increase the risk. So it is just worth checking, as well as blood sugar. Getting your insulin levels checked could also give you a better picture of what's going on, because if that is elevated, then that could mean that you have some insulin resistance. Either way, you'll find out if you do need to make some changes, and some small things that you can do to help maintain your blood sugar levels is to have more complex carbohydrates. So that would be things like whole grains, fiber containing foods, and also you want to reduce the simple carbohydrates, which are your things like soft drinks, cakes, chips, pretty much all of the fun stuff. But simply adding or removing something from your day to day could make a lot of difference. I'm not saying you need to completely overturn your diet. Now, next is cholesterol. So high cholesterol is something that people associate again with older age. But you know what? All these issues that we used to see in older people, we're really starting to see them more and more now in younger people too. Now, a blood test called a lipid panel will look at your total cholesterol, your LDL, your HDL, and your triglyceride levels. This is a really good snapshot of your cholesterol, and is also really important to see how your heart health is tracking too. So I'm not saying check it every single year, but if you're getting to 30 and you've never had it done before, it's a good idea to just take stock of where you're at. Speaking of your heart, you should have a look at your heart rate and blood pressure. For anyone wearing fitness trackers or smartwatches, you will know what your resting heart rate is, because they usually track that. Heart rate or resting heart rate is not the most comprehensive health measure, but if you do notice that your heart rate is trending higher and it's consistently like that, it could be a sign that you are quite stressed. What it could signal is that your heart is needing to work a little bit harder to get your blood everywhere. Now, there's many reasons that heart rate can go up, from stress to exercise to anxiety, so I don't really like relying on it. But having a lower resting heart rate is a good thing, and doing more exercise can help reduce it. Blood pressure, on the other hand, is a bit more useful. If you are 30 or around there and you don't know what your blood pressure is looking like, go check it. You can do this at a doctor or even at your local pharmacy. It takes no time at all, and catching high blood pressure early on, it can really prevent some serious heart issues later on, especially if you have family history. So go get your blood pressure checked. Now, the last thing to prioritize is sleep, and that is probably the hardest thing to get on top of, because for a lot of people, your 30s are pretty busy, whether that is work or dealing with kids or simply trying to stay alive. I don't believe in tracking sleep or anything like that, but what I am trying to do is make sure I have a consistent routine where I go to sleep and wake up at roughly the same time each day, regardless of whether that's a weekday or a weekend or whatever's going on. And I do try to get a minimum of 7 hours, because I've found that's the sweet spot for me. Everyone is actually a little bit different. Some people need more, some people need less. But the main point is to get enough sleep, because sleep impacts on your heart health, your blood sugar, your immune system, your mental health. It quite literally impacts on everything. But that is much easier said than done, I know. Apart from all the things that I have already gone through, I am also making sure that I'm getting enough iron, fiber, and protein from my diet. I've always had issues with low iron, so I'm really trying to get on top of that. Fiber, I'm pretty horrible with, and I do know how important it is for health. So I'm really trying to increase my fiber intake, not just for gut health. Fiber has so many things it helps with. It helps with blood sugar, and it has a ton of other benefits. The goal right now, though, is 25 to 30 grams a day of fiber, and right now I'm pretty sure I'm just not hitting that at all. But like with all things, and like I constantly do, I'm just making tiny changes and adding small bits of food to my day-to-day that will increase my fiber intake. Now, with protein, I actually think I am finally getting the right amount each day. I try to have about 20 grams with each meal, so that's about breakfast, lunch and dinner, ideally just 3 times a day. And I've finally got into a routine where I'm succeeding, and for most days I do hit my protein goals. That's taken quite a long time to get on top of, but protein, it goes hand in hand with muscle and bone health, so it is incredibly important. Now, it does sound pretty overwhelming listing in this video all of the things that you need to be aware of as you get older, and most of it does come down to just getting a blood test to see where you're at, and then you can just make changes where you need to. As for things like exercise and diet, like I constantly harp on, it's all about making small changes that you can maintain for a long time. Do things one at a time. That's just what works for me, and it might work for you too. I'm really starting to take these things a bit more seriously, not so much because I'm terrified of aging. I mean, that's true, I am. But I am also thinking about having children, and I want to be healthy for that. I want to prepare my body to deal with that. I'd also have enough energy to keep up with them as they get older too. What I have been realizing is that if you have a reason to make positive changes for your health, it becomes a lot easier. So find a reason. Like I said, it's not about obsessing over your health and constantly tracking everything. Just be aware of the things that start to decline or slow down, and use these markers that I've talked about as guideposts for how your body is doing, and start looking after it sooner rather than later. Chronic diseases are the leading cause of death in countries like the United States and also here in Australia. And the issues that lead to these chronic diseases, they start much earlier than you think. So it's just a good idea to get on top of them while you can. I hope you found this useful. I recently did take my own advice, and I did get a big old health check done because I was turning 30. And so I might do a video going through those results, but I will see you in the next video, and until then, keep playing the long game.